Walt Disney World has been open for 50 years now, and millions of people visit the resort every year. Nowadays, the resort has many amenities, from its 4 theme parks, 2 water parks, over 20 different hotels to choose from, a shopping district, and even a ton of company-ran utilities and services all over the resort. It's no joke that Disney has said you could spend a year at the resort and not do everything, because the reality is, there is that much to do. So, could you spend a year at Walt Disney World? How difficult would that be? And more importantly, how much would that cost? A lot of things would have to be figured out to go on this theoretical trip. Like, what am I going to eat? How am I going to get around? How much do I have to pay for tickets? And most importantly, how much is my home for a year going to cost? I spent more than a few hours trying to figure this all out, and I think after all that, I've come up with a result that is disappointing for most, but a cost that is probably roughly correct. Also, after I discuss all the specifics of this long trip, I will talk about the things that make this trip pretty difficult to even do to begin with. So where are we going to live? This is probably the biggest question. Lucky for us, Disney has that covered at their neighborhood community, Golden Oaks, a few miles south of the Magic Kingdom and about a mile north of Epcot. This actually has a lot of benefits. A chef will cook your food for you, you get access to extra magic powers in the parks, you get free transportation, lots of space, and most likely your own private pool. However, the houses there are expensive, and I mean really expensive. Like $2 million to $15 million expensive. Also, the dues for the Homeowners Association are like $25,000. So unless you're uber rich, this obviously actually isn't an option. So if that's off the table, the next obvious place to look is going to be within the resorts. There, you'll have easy access to the parks with free transportation. You'll also get an okay amount of space if you're just one person, free utilities, free Wi-Fi, and a big pool, which are all big pluses. Walt Disney World has over 25 different hotels to choose from, and all the hotels are split into 3, or some would argue 4 different categories. Value being the cheapest, moderate being in the middle, deluxe being the higher-end resorts on property, and deluxe villas being the ridiculously expensive rooms that are mostly for those guests who have DVC, Disney's timeshare for their hotels. Now, it won't come as a surprise, but the most reasonable place to live ends up being in the value category. To be exact, the cheapest hotel at Walt Disney World turns out to be the All-Star Sports Resort. I could have spent the next minute telling you about why the All-Star Sports Resort is the least expensive resort on property, but I'll save you the trouble. Just trust me, it is the least expensive resort to stay at. Putting a price on hotel rooms is a lot more complicated than buying a house. Lucky for me, for Disney-owned hotels, there are many websites covering the room rates. However, some resorts have specific days of the week where room rates are more expensive, there's on and off seasons, and almost all of the hotel room rates and on and off seasons are all different. The only reasonable way for me to calculate all of this was to do it by calculator manually, day by day. It was painfully slow. After adding together all 365 nights for the year, I came up with a yearly price of, brace yourselves, $70,283. Now actually, there is one more way to spend less, although accommodations become a lot worse if you want to spend less. The cheapest option is actually a campsite at Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort and Campground. Anybody up for a camping trip for a year in tropical weather? A tent site at the resort costs on average $119 a night. That's $43,469 a year. So you knock off 38% of the price and lose AC, heating, a lot of space, and a private bathroom. Now, I don't think anybody in the real world would give up those things for a year, especially in Florida, but if we're trying to find the theoretical least expensive place to live in Walt Disney World, this would be it. There's a lot of problems with both the hotel and the campground idea. I will get to that a little bit later. For now, let's talk about the other expenses that you will have, that being food, park tickets, and the other miscellaneous things. For food, probably the easiest way to live on the cheap side would just be to go to a grocery store, but turns out that is one of the things that they don't really have at Walt Disney World. Good news is you can still get deliveries on property for a flat fee of $10 per delivery. So you can just use Amazon Prime Now, which is pretty much the online equivalent to the grocery store. Assuming you eat a normal diet, we'll guess you spend about $60 a week on groceries. That's $3,128.58 for the entire year in just the food. After adding the delivery fees, a $5 tip for your delivery driver every single delivery every week, and your membership for Amazon Prime, you're looking at about $4,023.58 a year on food alone. You can probably spend less on food. I bet a lot of people do, but this is definitely a reasonable number. Another thing we need on this trip are park tickets. Obviously, that's why we're going to Disney to begin with. If we're going to be there for a year, we're going to need an annual pass. Assuming we want access to Walt Disney World's 4 theme parks and 2 water parks without blackout dates for the whole year, we'll need a Platinum Plus annual pass. Assuming you're not a Florida resident or have DVC, that annual pass is going to set you back $1,295. Adding together the prices of our tickets, food, and campground, we'll end up with a grand total of $48,787.58. This still doesn't account for everything. You gotta think about how much your phone plan is gonna be, if you need to drive a car on property, and additionally, you'll need to figure out how many little things you're gonna spend money on while at Walt Disney World. Spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot of things to tempt you around every corner. I'll add an additional $5,000 to the budget just for any of these little additional things. That puts us at a final yearly price of $53,787.58. There is a lot of problems with this trip. For one thing, going back to what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the hotels, you can't stay in one hotel room or campsite for more than 30 days, because after that you would be considered a resident and not a guest. This means you need to switch rooms at least 13 times a year, which is a complete logistical nightmare. Additionally, it's not like people have over $50,000 to spend on going to Disney World for a year. Some might think you could supplement the cost of living there by working as a Disney cast member. Of course, we're talking about living at Walt Disney World here. That would only make sense. You have to work as well while you're there, right? You would get discounts that would definitely cut down on the price of your stay. However, even if you worked on property, it would be pretty much impossible for you to make enough money in a year to live there if you were getting paid Disney's minimum wage of $15 an hour. If you did 40 hours a week on average for a year, you would only make a little over $30,000. That is a long way from our $53,000 price tag, so if we're there alone, then that is definitely off the table. So I think that the moral of the story here is that for most people, this is way out of their price range and is never going to happen. It's probably not the best use of your money either. You could have invested the $53,000 you spent and had a whole lot more money in the future. But hey, maybe the experience is worth the money, so in the future, you can tell your kids and grandchildren all about it. Anyways though guys, we'll leave it here. If you liked the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you really like the channel and or the video, check out my Patreon and support the channel there. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day everyone.